All my life I have been passionate about family, especially some of the things we have gone through. I went through turbulent times growing up because of polygamy in my father's house and all of that, and all the intrigues and complexities and complications that go sometimes with polygamous homes. And then going through some issues that has to do with inner wounds and unmet needs. Left me a little bit more broken than I was prepared for. I got into marriage with all those wounds. However, I married a very wonderful man who found out that inside me there is a longing to see families return to what God originally intended. So that took me through a search since 2006. But very recently, I don't know, God just blessed me with a very wonderful husband. In the last 2 years, I've been on very intense study and research on marriage and family. And almost completed my program on marriage and family therapy. Okay? Training under James Dobson and all of that. We went through every aspect of family. Intense, yes. Took a toll on me, yes. But I appreciate God for a husband who says, I married you not just for you to look after me, but for me to also look into your life and find out what God put there originally. And those are the things that I have gone through. So anywhere you meet my husband today, on my behalf, just help me appreciate him. It took him time. Even to get me to start reading took him time. Because sometimes when you have gone through brokenness, you find out that you do more of listening and watching a message than reading it. But by the time you have gone through, you have come out from some kind of brokenness and you're moving towards healing. Some of the things you were created to do will begin to come back. There is something called redemptive gift. Some of your redemptive gift, you don't even use them again. They become perverted because of the things you have been through. So this section will be talking to parents about teaching your children about sex. I noticed, I said to myself, I'll first of all talk to parents about their families before I come and talk about parenting. I discovered that you can't talk about parenting without talking to them about their relationships. So each time you're talking about them parenting their children, at the same time, you are talking about their relationship. So we'll be answering a lot of questions today. So what we're going to do today is about 60 minutes or 50 minutes of a group discussion on talking to our children about sex. Have you noticed that when you hear the word sex, it looks as if the edge should drop and people should fall inside it. Yet we don't have the same experience when we're talking about business, or we're talking about romance, or we're talking about any other word. Any other word doesn't cause the kind of problems sex. The question becomes, how do I talk to my children about sex? So let's look at the introduction. So I'm going to ask you first of all, what has prevented parents from talking about sex with their children? Does it make you uncomfortable? Do you feel some kind of discomfort when you start talking to your children about sex? The next thing we're going to discover is some parents get embarrassed when they want to talk to their children about sex. And some parents do not know how to go about it. Where do I start from? What should I tell them? My 3-year-old, my 2-year-old does not understand what I'm talking about. We're going to look into all those issues and where you should start when you're talking to them. So these are some of the reasons that parents have a problem with talking to their children about sex. Well, the fact is that if you don't talk to them about sex, someone will do it. Who will now do it? Maybe the media culture. If it's not media culture, at the playground, while they are playing with their friends, you will discover that someone will talk to them about sex. And some of the things I noticed, that even when they are done with physical education, and maybe they are trying to bathe and change their clothes, and then they begin to talk about their body parts. Say, yours is too long, yours is too small, and all of that. Your child will come home embarrassed. Someone will talk to your children about sex. And since someone will talk to them about sex, you better start talking to them about sex yourself. So that someone will not give them wrong information. And sometimes some of the places where they get this information from is not healthy. So you have to now take the responsibility to talk to children about sex. I did this survey. This survey was one of the surveys we did in our school. National Survey of Family Growth. Of course, this particular survey came from the US, but we hope to get the one from Nigeria as we move on. 55 in a group of 15 to 19-year-olds, 55% of boys and 53% of girls had admitted to having sexual intercourse before 19. 55% of boys and 54% of girls had engaged in oral sex before, that is between 15 and 19. So they are no longer virgins. And 14% of girls said that by age 25, they have engaged in same-sex behavior. They have engaged in homosexuality. That is 14% before they get to 25. It also means that even the homosexual community have had an impact on our culture and our children. So you can't keep quiet and say, I can't talk to them. They are not ready. They won't understand what I'm talking about. Let's look at men's addiction to porn. In the 60s, a boy is exposed to porn between ages 11 to 13. Today, it has gone down to age 5. It is happening on the internet. Children are using technology, so they will be exposed to it. So don't wait for pornography, for porn, to tell your children about sex. Take the initiative and tell them by yourself. Because once they stumble into it, assuming they are doing their assignment on the internet, and something pops up. Sometimes a picture pops up on the internet. You click on it. It has something to do with porn. In fact, there is an advert some companies do. They will use a naked woman to do that. All of these pop up. If your child sees that for the first time and you are not the one that told the child will have some kind of shock and does not know that this kind of thing exists. You notice that your children, when they get a little bit older, they'll start asking you, Mommy, where did that baby come from? Children do not have the link that a baby, it is through sexual process that a child is born. They don't know. Some children have asked me that question. And if you say, this baby, it was inside the auntie's stomach, I say it's a baby. How did it enter there? So you must now take time to explain it to them so that they are not shocked. Life does not shock them. The question becomes, what kind of visual images are our children taking in? The earlier we start talking to our children about sex, the better for us. It is our responsibility to be the one, because you don't want them. There are images that will disturb them for life. I met a young man who has been addicted to porn for 25 years. As at the time I was talking to him 2 years ago. He allowed me to share the testimony. We took him through an inner healing and discovered that the addiction broke. So he said he just remembered for the first time how he started. He said he was at 7. He came into his uncle's house, his brothers, his elder brothers, and all of them were watching pornography, and he saw it. He was dazed. He wanted to run away. They said, sit down, you be small boy. So they sat him down. He was watching porn like you watch cartoon. From there, he became addicted to it. Now, whether we like it or not, porn is everywhere. Everywhere. If you go to a video shop to go and buy a video, you will see a line-up of pornography. If your children are going, send your child to go and buy CDs. Even if they're going to buy Nathaniel Bassey's music or Mercy Amedu's songs, they get there, they pick Mercy Amedu's latest album. As they are coming out, there is a lineup of pornography. And listen, even the pictures are there. Don't go too far. Now, businesses, nightclubs, use naked women banners to express their businesses. Your children are seeing it. They are not deaf. They are not blind. So, what has prevented us from talking to our children about sex? The first one is the original sin. When man fell, shame came. So our body parts, originally that's supposed to cause us any discomfort, we became ashamed of our body. Now you can say I. Nobody is wondering what you're saying. Nobody gets uncomfortable when you say I, when you say ear, when you say nose. But when you now begin to talk about the body parts that are private, everybody gets uncomfortable. Because at the fall of man, everything fell. At the singles part, on married people, I'll be talking about how to redeem your sexuality. I'll be taking them through the process of redeeming their sexuality. All right? Because even sex is crying out to be redeemed. Sex, the gift of sex, will look at itself and say, this is not what God intended me to be from the beginning. Sex will look at different aspects of life. Sex will look at childbirth and said, childbirth has not been violated. Instead, it has even improved. How come it's me that is being deteriorated? And just like Nigeria is crying out to be redeemed from corruption, even sex is crying out, the gift of sex is crying out to be redeemed from perversion and corruption. And I trust that our generation will do that. So what prevents us from talking to our children about sex is, first of all, our discomfort and our shame that came from the fall of man. And you find out that the body parts that we're supposed to talk about very easily and very openly, everything becomes secret, because the moment man fell, he started hiding. He had shame. So we need to know that there is nothing wrong with your body parts. You need to talk to, and when you're talking to children about sex, you won't use code names. You will use the name they are supposed to be called, so they will know there's nothing wrong with it. So my objective this morning is to get you to have a deeper understanding of your own sexuality and God's plan for your own sexuality. God has a plan. You need to understand yourself before you help another person. That's what they say in the plane. My second objective this morning is the importance of discussing sexual issues with our spouses. You understand it, discuss with your spouse. Then the third one is to learn the basic principles on how to talk to your children about sex, God's design, the gift of sex. There is a way to talk in every age category. If your child is doing 0 to 3, there's how to talk to them. The next stage, 6 to 9, there's ways to talk to them. So what is God's plan for sexuality? So I'm going to ask first question. Where did you learn about sex first as parents? Where did you learn about sex? Bring microphone. The first time you learned about sex, or you heard about it, where did you hear? From your church? Why is everyone looking at me? Some people have not been able to survive the fact that this woman is just talking about sex. Some of us feel so uncomfortable. Get used to it. Where did you learn about sex first? Okay, some of us, it's not it. Primarily, is it in our churches? Did you learn it from our fellowship centers? Okay. Quite a few of us learned at home. Some of us learned from the barber shop. Some of us learned from the boys' club. Some of us learned at the playground. But most essentially, the right places that are supposed to be teaching us about the gift of sex are not doing so. So if you're going to talk to your children about sex, you must understand your own story. Now, question. Have you ever talked to each other, that is you and your spouse, have you ever discussed your own sexuality by yourselves? Because that discussion is what will form the game plan on how you will talk to your children about it. You know, sometimes when you want to talk about this, they say the boys should talk to the boys, the girls should talk to the girls. I'm going to get to all of that. Two of you must discuss your own sexuality. You must talk about it. Now, if I'm now going to start talking about sex therapy, I will even start going into the areas of, even in sex, couples should be able to discuss freely how you want your husband to touch you and how you want, what works for you and what does not work for you. You don't sit down on the bed like a log of wood and say, do quickly and come out. And most of us have also been broken in this area that it is a taboo for you to talk about at all. You know why I'm saying this? It's easy to talk to your children about the negative part of sex, what they should not do, what they should not do. But let's now start talking to them about what they should do. Are we together? What should I teach my children? What both of you have discussed becomes your subject matter for discussion. And when you're going to talk about them, it's not just, for, like I said earlier, for two of you to talk about it differently. Let's talk about it together. It's not a taboo. There's nothing wrong with it. Secondly, still on your own story, what did you learn about sex in the media? What did you learn? You know, sometimes when you look at the media, it looks as if everybody is having sex. Children are having sex, or everywhere. Old people are having sex with young people. It seems to be everywhere. I remember when I was younger, there's a show they used to call Bill Cosby's show. that show starts, I know because we had just had problems, that show starts and ends, there is no sex. Even when they talk about sex, they are talking about it in a way for you to learn. I remember one of the episodes, Bill Cosby's wife was talking about menopause. And all her children, she was she was having heat flashes. And then her children were all panicking. All right. In that, they are teaching, they are expressing something. I remember a show when I was younger, it's called Masquerade, Zebudiah. There's nothing about sex. But if you take what we have today, what is the media teaching our children? Take your child's cartoon, whatever age, the pictures and the images that our children are getting today is that everybody is having sex, and if you're not having sex, there's something wrong with you. Then the question becomes, what are the myths that you grew up with when it has to do with sex? The things you learned that were true. Now let me ask you a question. Those things, is it true that people are everywhere, or everybody, all they are doing, they don't have work, all they are just doing is sex? Is that true? My mom taught me, the only sex education I got from my mom is a wonderful woman, very wonderful. The moment I started menstruating, she called me. Just one talk. He said, if a boy touches you like this, you'll be pregnant. So,